Okay, picking up where we left off on page 509, we're talking about the maintenance task and these four categories of maintenance. And the terms are a little weird here, but some examples will probably make it a little bit more sense. They talk about corrective maintenance, and the whole point of corrective maintenance is, diagnose and correct errors in operational systems. Respond to errors. So more than likely, you have a system that, like Microsoft Windows has an event viewer where you go in and look and hunt for things that are going wrong. There'll be lots of scenarios where you have a machine that's screaming at the top of its lungs trying to get your attention to try to tell you that something's going wrong. Like there's a drive that's getting ready to fail and you're not paying attention, and then all of a sudden the drive fails and you go, oh my god, ah! And if you've been watching, listening so to speak, to what the server had been telling you for months, you would have been able to tell. We had one of those scenarios where I had a drive read failure, and I went, oh, okay. And then the next week I had 2 read failures. And the next week I had 4 read failures. And the next week I went, I think we need to order another hard drive real quick. Yeah, okay. So, of course, the worst case scenario is you have a complete system failure, and so now your corrective fix is to, crack open the toolbox and start swapping parts out to get the whole system back up and running. When the system is operational again, then you should spend a little bit of time trying to figure out, what happened and what you can do to prevent it. There are an awful lot of tools out there that can help you, but generally speaking, paying attention to the event logs is a good place to start. This next one they talk about is adaptive maintenance. This is talking about adding additional items. So, for example, this is more like in a software world, this would be enhancements. Somebody comes to me and said, hey, can you add this feature to your software? Cool. So, we're adding additional, disk capacity. We're adding a bunch of stuff. So it could be minor, it could be extremely difficult because adding this new feature might, take a tremendous amount of work from a hardware and software perspective. Just depends. So they talk about when you do one of these, you probably need to have like an order, like a level 1, 2, or 3 request. Level 1 meaning, hey, this is an excellent idea. This is going to save us tons of money. If we do this now, it'll be great. And, level 3 being, when you get around to it, you don't have anything else to do. You might consider adding this new thing. So, in an odd way, we're talking about like, what's popular now, of course, is I've got a website going and somebody says, I want to use my iPhone to do my job. So can you write me an application for the web that allow me to do my inspection or whatever it is they do for a living? And do it on my iPhone and be able to send it through the web to update. You might think, yeah, it's a great idea, but you probably need to spend a little bit more time figuring out, what hardware and software you're going to have to use to make that work. So it could be a simple task, or it could be a monstrous task. Okay, the next one is they call perfective maintenance. Perfective maintenance is like automating your existing tasks. One of the things we used to say is if you do something more than once, you should write a script to do it. So what we had is we had a gazillion scheduled tasks. We would figure out what needed to be done, either doing backups or doing all sorts of strange things to the applications in the middle of the night for tuning, and we would run these things as scheduled tasks. We even had a scheduled task that told us if other scheduled tasks ran. So I would get an email in the morning every day telling me, well, generally it just says task okay. That was it. But otherwise, it'd be a message that would pop up and say, this scheduled task on this server, failed, and this scheduled task on this SQL server failed. And so you got in the morning, you had your coffee, and then you launched off to find out what's going on. So the point of the story is using automation tools like scripts and scheduled tasks to kind of help tweak the system that you're making you more efficient. Now, some of these others are making, like the adaptive maintenance is making the users more efficient. Okay? Perfective is really kind of making the system more efficient, not necessarily the users, but, you know, compressing files and doing all sorts of things would ultimately make them more efficient, but it's really kind of sort of internal to the IT department. So the IT department normally makes one. No, we don't wait for a customer to come and say, "Oh, please, will you do an index optimization on that database?" You know, normally the users aren't going to do that. So the IT people have to know how often we should rebuild indexes, for example. And of course, the whole idea is if you're doing these type of things, you can just reduce your total costs. So if I have all the entire suite of tools doing all this type of things behind the scenes and just giving me email address, notes telling me these things are happening, then I don't have to have quite the staff as I would if I didn't have these tools. So, cool. Network monitoring, those kind of things, hunting for problems, that's all part of this as well. Okay. And then the last one is about preventive maintenance. And preventive maintenance is exactly what it sounds like. We're talking about, okay, I'm going to swap out this, I'm going to, you know, check the logs and see if I have a drive that's getting ready to fail. I'm going to put new software. I'm going to optimize the hard drives. I'm going to defrag this. I'm going to go through and do all these things that need to happen. So it requires analysis of those areas that are likely to have failures. And to tell you the truth, most of you guys know that in the computer system, the parts that are going to fail are the parts that have moving parts. It's going to be a fan or a hard drive that fails. It's not going to be, you know, the CPU goes out or the memory goes out. It's generally speaking going to be related to something with moving parts. So again, the whole idea is if I can go in and solve a problem before it occurs, like I've got, you know, progressively larger number of read areas on this hard drive, and so I buy another one. That's another thing we would do. When we would you know, put a RAID system in. Let's say it had 6 hard drives in a RAID enclosure. We would order 7 hard drives and just have one sitting on a shelf. That way, when, I didn't say if, I said when we have a drive failure, we can just pop the other one out, put the new one in. Okay. On page 512, they talk about the maintenance team. And the maintenance team sounds kind of strange here because we're really talking about, you know, IT maintenance. But they're talking about, you know, the system administrator. And the system administrator is the one who's supposed to be, you know, the top dog. He's the guy who has all the right permissions. And that reminds me of something. I'm going to find this cool website. Here's a website talking about the System Administrator Code of Ethics, or SAGE, as it used to be called. And you can get this thing in a poster format that you can, you know, frame and put on the wall. And it basically talks about, you know, I'm the system administrator, I have all these rights, and so I'm trying to convince people that I'm not abusing those rights. For example, you can get t-shirts that say, I read your email. And that's the exact opposite of what we're trying to show here. That, you know, there's professionalism and integrity and all these kinds of things. You know, privacy, you know, communication, blah, 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 blah. So this is a really cool thing to do, and you ought to not just read this, you ought to practice it. And I wouldn't at all mind putting this up on the wall someplace in your office to let people know that, yes, I'm a system administrator, but I take my job very seriously. Anyway, there's an example of the Code of Ethics poster there on page 513. Okay, that was the system administrator. So he manages the computers and network systems, ultimately responsible for, you know, the hardware and software part. The system analyst, which is what you guys are, you know, you're investigate and locate problems. You know, we're talking about maintenance now. Using all these analytical tools to find out what's going on. Then you have programmers, and you have application programmers and system programmers and database programmers or database people. Then you have organizational issues where, you know, you might have this team, your IT team is maintaining the old system, and then you have a new team come on to handle the new system, and how are you going to integrate the people associated with that? Yeah, it gets a little complex. Okay. On page 515, they talk about maintenance requests. When somebody comes in, they may come in and say, I found a bug and I really need you guys to fix it. And you might have to have some way of accurately describing the bug, a screenshot or something, because you know how this works, right? They call up and say, "Oh, I got an error message," and you say, "Oh, what did it say?" And they go, "I don't know, I closed it." Okay, well, call me again when you get the error message. So again, the users aren't well adapted at providing you all the information you need. So if you have you could have a form, a fill-out form, electronic or paper, that basically says, here's what I want. That way you can prioritize them all. And they go through this little routine about, the initial determination. The system administrator makes initial determination if this is justifiable. And there could be a system review committee that would review all these things. Task completion, assign a task to an individual. User notification, okay, we're done. And of course, you could establish priorities to make sure you're working these things in the right thing. And there could be a configuration management team. It could be like a corporate body that approves all new systems. And the idea is, let's say you're a Windows-based operation, and all the machines you have are Windows-based. And somebody from some lab somewhere comes in and says, "Hey, we need a new Linux server over here to do something." And you're going, does it have to be a Linux server? We don't have any expertise in Linux. Couldn't a Windows server work as well? So sometimes you're going to have to temper what it is they ask for what it is they really need. What they need and what they want. So big companies tend to have configuration control board or something like that. All right, and it also helps handle all sorts of, if there's a corporate documentation or corporate color scheme or corporate color scheme for a web page, those kind of things. The configuration control board could help in those regards. Okay, on page 517 they talk about maintenance releases. So this is software that you write. Wouldn't it be kind of cool if you could instantly tell what version somebody's software was running? Just like here, if I go and click and say About, it tells me I'm running Internet Explorer 9 and there's the version. Now, you should do similar. Every application that you put together ought to be able to tell what version number it is, so that you're releasing patches and updates, and somebody says, "Well, I can't get this to work." And so the first thing you do is you sit down in their chair and you bring up Help About, and you go, "Geez, you're not even running the right version." So very helpful. It definitely makes it easy when people, you do them with numbers. Don't say this is the the kumquat release and this is the orange release, this is a banana release. No, use numbers so people can tell which one they have. Version control. This is kind of an internal thing. Is when programmers work, they keep track of all the software and they just kind of create new versions off of this, and it's kind of a technique called version control. I use one called subversion, and subversion is kind of an interesting play on words. But I will tell you an example of where it does not work. Or I'm sorry, it works fine, just not being used. There's a company that I like. It's called Acronis, and I use it for doing backup and recovery, which we're going to talk about here in just a few more pages. And one of the features they have is when you configure the backup the way you want, there's a little button that says "Make this the default," and so you click that, and so the next time you fire up a job, it remembers all those features. Well, every single version, when they upgrade, from version 11 to version 12, they break that feature, and so they release a patch. And so they'll come up with version 13, and they'll break that feature, and they release a patch. They're not using a subversion or any type of version control. If they were, you would never ever lose a feature when you did an upgrade. Okay, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this up again in just a few.